The standard way of thinking about hallucinations is actually quite mechanical when you break it down. It is natural to suppose that they occur when there is some sort of freakish auto-stimulation of the brain. This is that startling, but actually quite normal, hallucination, in which amputees seem to feel not just the presence of the amputated part, but specific sensations like itches and tingles and pains in it. It is a psychological reality that defies the physical reality of the body. It often happens that new amputees, immediately after surgery, simply cannot believe that a leg or foot has been amputated. They often require visual confirmation. They have to pull back the sheets and see that the limb is gone, because their internal sensations of its continued presence are so vivid and realistic. To explain how this physical impossibility could happen, Descartes used a wonderful analogy involving the technology of his day, specifically the Bell-Pull systems found in great aristocratic houses. We have to remember the context of the 17th century. Before there were electric bells, intercoms, and walkie-talkies, these massive houses were equipped with marvelous mechanical systems of wires and pulleys. It was a complex network hidden behind the walls that permitted one to call for a servant from any room in the house. The interface was simple. A sharp tug on the velvet sash, dangling from a hole in the wall, pulled a physical wire that ran over pulleys, traveling through the walls and floorboards all the way to the pantry or the servants' quarters. Once the energy of that pull reached the end of the line, it jangled one of a number of labeled bells, informing the butler that service was required in the master bedroom or the parlor or the library. The systems worked well for their intended purpose, but because they were mechanical chains of cause and effect, they were tailor-made for pranks. Consider a mischievous child or a prankster finding access to those wires, tugging on the parlor wire anywhere along its length. Even if the tug happened in the basement or the attic, would send the butler scurrying to the parlor. He would arrive under the heartfelt misapprehension that someone had called him from there. This is, in essence, a modest little hallucination of sorts. A signal was received and interpreted correctly by the receiver, but the origin of the signal was deceptive. Similarly, Descartes thought about the nervous system in this mechanical way. Since perceptions are caused by various complicated chains of events in the nervous system, chains that lead eventually to the control center of the conscious mind, then the mind is like the butler in the pantry. It only knows that the bell has rung. If one could intervene somewhere along the chain of the nervous system, say if you could tap in anywhere on the optic nerve, somewhere between the physical eyeball and the seat of consciousness, and if you were capable of tugging just right on those nerves, you would produce exactly the chain of events that would be caused by a normal veridical perception of something real. And this would produce, at the receiving end in the mind, exactly the effect of such a conscious perception. The mind would have no way of distinguishing the prank from the reality. The brain or some part of it inadvertently played a mechanical trick on the mind. That was Descartes' explanation of phantom limb hallucinations. And for that specific phenomenon, it works quite well. Phantom limb hallucinations, while remarkably vivid, are by our terminology relatively weak hallucinations. This is a crucial distinction we must make. They consist of unorganized pains and itches, usually all occurring in one sensory modality at a time. Amputees do not typically see their phantom feet in high definition, nor do they hear them walking or smell them. So something like Descartes' mechanical account could be the right way to explain phantom limbs. Setting aside for the time being the notorious mysteries, about how the physical brain could interact with the non-physical conscious mind, which was a problem Descartes never fully solved. But we can see that even the purely mechanical part of Descartes' story must be wrong as an account of relatively strong hallucinations. When we talk about strong hallucinations, we mean seeing a ghost that speaks and casts a shadow. There is no way the brain, as a mere illusionist, could store and manipulate enough false information to fool an inquiring mind in that way. Think about the sheer amount of data required to simulate reality. The brain can relax and let the real world provide a surfeit of true information. When you look at a real tree, the details are provided by the tree. But if the brain starts trying to short-circuit its own nerves, or pull its own wires, as Descartes would have said, the results will be only the weakest of fleeting hallucinations. To understand why this is impossible, consider this analogy from the world of technology. The malfunctioning of your neighbor's electric hairdryer might cause electromagnetic interference. It might cause snow or static or hums and buzzes, or perhaps odd flashes to appear on your television set. That is simple interference in the signal chain. But if you look at your television and you see a bogus version of the evening news, complete with an anchor reading a report that never happened, you know immediately that it had an elaborately organized cause. It is an effect far beyond the talents of a hairdryer. A hairdryer can create noise, but it cannot create the organized semantic information of a news broadcast. Similarly, a seizure or a chemical imbalance in the brain can create static, but it cannot create a fully interactive three-dimensional world from scratch. It is tempting to suppose that perhaps we have been too gullible about hallucinations. We accept the stories of ghosts and visions too easily. Perhaps only mild, fleeting, thin hallucinations ever occur, and the strong, complex ones do not occur because they cannot occur. The computational cost is simply too high for the brain to sustain. A cursory review of the literature on hallucinations certainly does suggest that there is something of an inverse relation between the strength of the hallucination and its frequency, as well as between strength and credibility. The more detailed the story, the less likely it is to be true. But that review also provides a clue leading to another theory of the mechanism of hallucination production. If we look closely at how people describe these experiences, one of the endemic features of hallucination reports is that the victim will comment on his or her rather unusual passivity in the face of the hallucination. This is a detail that is often overlooked, but it is the key. Hallucinators usually just stand and marvel at what they are seeing. Typically, they feel no desire to probe, challenge, or query. They do not walk up to the ghost and try to shake its hand, and they take no steps to interact with the apparitions. It is likely, for the reasons we have just explored regarding computational complexity, that this passivity is not an inessential feature of hallucination. It is not just that they are scared stiff. It is a necessary precondition for any moderately detailed and sustained hallucination to occur. If the victim were to interact, the illusion would shatter. Not for nothing does cinema verite, the style of filmmaking that feels raw and real, make extensive use of the freely roaming handheld camera. A handheld camera explores the world unpredictably, and therefore requires a real world to explore, whereas a static camera allows for a fake set. In real life, the same principle was used by Grigory Potemkin in a famous historical deception to economize on the show Villages, to be reviewed by Catherine the Great. As the Empress toured the Crimea, Potemkin erected elaborate facades of prosperous villages, painted fronts that looked like happy settlements from the river, but behind them there was nothing. The trick worked because her itinerary had to be ironclad. If she had decided to stop the boat and walk behind the buildings, the illusion would have collapsed immediately. So one solution to the problem of strong hallucination is to suppose that there is a link between the victim and illusionist, a cooperative link that makes it possible for the illusionist to build the illusion. Dependent on, and hence capable of anticipating, the exploratory intentions and decisions of the victim. This implies that the part of your brain creating the illusion knows what the conscious part of your brain is going to do next. Where the illusionist is unable to read the victim's mind, in order to obtain this information, it is still sometimes possible in real life for an illusionist, such as a stage magician, for instance, to entrain a particular line of inquiry through subtle but powerful psychological forcing. This is the art of making someone think they are choosing freely, when in fact they are being guided down a specific path. Thus, a card magician has many standard ways of giving the victim the illusion that he is exercising his free choice in what cards on the table he examines. The magician might say, pick a card, any card, but through physical placement and timing, he ensures that you pick exactly the card he wants you to pick, when in fact there is only one card that may be turned over. The victim feels free, but their trajectory is fixed. To revert to our earlier thought experiment about the brain in the vat, if the evil scientists can force the brain in the vat to have a particular set of exploratory intentions, if they can control what the brain wants to look at, they can solve the combinatorial explosion problem simply by preparing only the anticipated material. They don't need to simulate the whole beach, only the grains of sand you decide to touch. The system will be only apparently interactive. It feels like a wide open world, but it is a narrow corridor. Similarly, Descartes' evil demon can sustain the illusion with less than infinite power. If he can sustain an illusion of free will in the victim, while actually minutely controlling the investigation of the imaginary world, if the demon knows where you will look, he can build the world just in time. But there's an even more economical and realistic way, in which hallucinations could be produced in a brain. We don't need evil scientists or demons to explain this. We need a mechanism that explains how the brain fools itself, a way that harnesses the very freewheeling curiosity of the victim to generate the content of the illusion. We can understand how it works by analogy with a party game, a game that reveals the surprising nature of how we construct reality.